BGMC. The biblical truth lives here.
Welcome to the City Gate Messianic Bible Study, being brought to you by Beth-Going Messianic Congregation. What is the importance of the biblical City Gate? It was a place contracts were made that are binding forever. The City Gate was also a place of redemption for the kinsman redeemer. The City Gate was a place where chastisement was administered. So come join us now as we enter into the City Gate
Messianic
Bible Study.
Let's get a blessing. This is Parash number 14. It is by Era. It's the beginning of the study of the plagues in Egypt. And it's very good for us to understand that these are not just any plague. These are not random. This is Jehovah. What you see there on the slide, these are not just plagues of blood and frogs and gnats and flies and livestock. It's actually going after Egyptian gods. Okay? It's going after Egyptian gods, showing that the God of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov is the one true God, and he can destroy any other so-called gods, which are demons. Okay? And it's very, you need to study this. If you're going to understand the book of Revelation, then you need to study this first, because what Jehovah does in the end, what Yeshua tells us in Revelation, our Messiah tells us in Revelation, it patterns what you're going to see here. And I have a full study, and if you guys want the PowerPoint, I think it's like 200 slides or something like that, a full Seder PowerPoint that I have, the Pesach Seder. But it goes real into depth of every one of these plagues and all the Egyptian gods in depth of what we're looking at here, because Jehovah is doing something quite amazing here in this parasha. Okay, but the first part we're going to look at here, turn to Shemot, Exodus chapter 6, verse number 6. Shemot 6, verse number 6. Open up your phones. And
got my Bible.
All right. Okay, you got it, David? Would you read it for us, please?
Verse number 6.
Correct.
Therefore say to the people of Israel, I am Adonai. I will free you from the forced labor of the Egyptians, rescue you from their oppression, and redeem you with an outstretched arm and with a great judgment.
All right, pause there. All right, so in this verse, the key here is the word redeem. Jehovah's going to redeem us. Okay, so there's this theme that will go throughout the word redemption. Okay, Yeshua redeemed us, but if the Father redeemed us first in Shemot, and he's telling us here in verse 6, and he's telling us with his own name, I am Jehovah, and you'll see that in the Hebrew. I will free you from the forced labor of the Egyptians. Now, this was prophesied. That's also something that happened. It was prophesied that this would happen. Jehovah told that to Avram, that his descendants would be slaves in a land that they do not know for over 400 years. But this redemption theme will go throughout the Bible. Okay, and you can't understand Revelation, what's going on there, and as we talked about in a moment ago, about the different plagues are against different demon gods of Egypt. But now this theme of redemption. David Jackson, can you tell me where you might find something else about this? Another person that we see being redeemed throughout the Bible. Is there a person that you can shoot off the top of your head there to give me that he might be redeemed, or a book that shows redemption? Dave? Can you hear me, Dave?
How about Book of Matthew?
Is there anybody in particular that is being redeemed? I mean, you can't just say the whole book. That's like the children's ministry. When in doubt, say Moses in the Old Testament, in the Tanakh, and when in doubt, say Yeshua in the New Testament.
Who was redeemed? Well, it wouldn't be the Book of Matthew, but Paul or Saul.
Okay, what about you? What about you, Neil? You got anybody that gets redeemed? You know, somebody you can shows this redemption thing. A person, not the Messiah, but another person.
Messiah was the Redeemer, not the redeemed, but Shaul of Tarsus is the one that comes to mind for me. He can completely did the teshuvah and turned, and but as far as I don't know if you would consider I don't guess Job would be one of the he wasn't redeemed, but he was tested.
Seriously.
Yeah, but I don't know. I can't put my finger on anyone other than Shaul that was actually approached by Yehovah or Yeshua, and then made that complete turn.
All right, that's good to start off. Starting off here with something good for you guys to look at, and so let's turn to the book of Ruth, the book of Ruth, Ruth chapter 3. This is this book I definitely tell everybody to study in depth, because the gospel is right here. In the 4 chapters, Ruth is only 4 chapters. Turn to Ruth chapter 3, verse 12 and 13. And Neil, would you read that, please?
Now it is true that I am a redeeming kinsman, but there is a redeemer who is a closer relative than I am. Stay tonight. If in the morning he will redeem you, fine. Let him redeem you. But if he doesn't want to redeem you, then as Jehovah lives, I will redeem you. Now lie down until morning.
Okay, so what we have here is this redemption theme. And Ruth is a Moabite woman, so she's a Gentile from a cursed people. And she has left, her father-in-law died, and her husband died, and her brother-in-law died. And she went back with Naomi, back to Israel, because they had left Bethlehem, and they were living in the land of Moab, because there was a famine in Israel when they left. And now she came back, and she had the most wonderful prayer that you have in the Bible. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your God will be my God. And nothing but death will separate me from you. So it's an amazing book, and I definitely recommend everybody reading it and studying it and putting it to memory, almost to be able to quote the whole thing, because it is all about redemption. And it's a redemption of Jew and Gentile, and about going to the fields. And this is why you know what calendar is correct, because you need a bikurim, you need a first fruit offering of barley, because that's the first thing to come up. So you know when Pesach is, because if the barley is going into bloom, you're gonna need that for your first fruit offering. So Ruth went out there during the barley offering, and she stayed through the summer. But you see here, Redeeming kinsman, redeemer, redeem you. So this is all about redemption. And that's what Pesach is all about. It's about redeeming, because Jehovah said that in Shemot 6, verse 6. I'm going to redeem you. So now we go to Ruth, and we see the redeeming kinsman, which Boaz was the second in line. So you have somebody who's closer, that would be the father. And then you got Yeshua, who's the next closest one. He is the son of the living God, living Elohim, and he is a redeeming kinsman. So with that understanding, turn to Titus chapter 2. Titus chapter 2, verse 12 through 15. Titus chapter 2, verse 12 through 15. Dave, would you read that? You got it?
Neil can probably find it faster than I can.
Well, I'm still trying to find Titus.
Are you guys using paper Bibles? Good. Titus chapter 2, verse 12 through 15. Titus chapter 2, verse 12 through 15.
I've got it if you want me to read it.
Please.
It teaches us to renounce godliness and worldly pleasures, and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives now in this age, while continuing to expect the blessed fulfillment of our certain hope, which is the appearing of Shekinah of our great
Shekinah.
Shekinah of our great Elohim, and the appearing of our deliverer, Yeshua the Messiah. He gave himself up on our behalf in order to free us from all violation of Torah, and to purify for himself a people who would be his own, eager to do good. These are the things you should say, encourage and rebuke with full authority. Don't let anyone look down on you.
Amen. All right, so what we're looking at there is we're being told in verse number 14, he freed us, okay? He freed us from the bond of sin. So that would be a redeemer. We're being told by young Titus there that Yeshua is our redeemer. Okay, so we have this redemption theme throughout the Bible. Okay, you have to be redeemed from serving other pagan gods, or there's no other gods. They're demons masquerading as whatever. So now you have from Torah, you have Jehovah saying, "I'm going to redeem you with an outstretched arm," in Shemot 6. And you got Ruth basically the whole book, but we read Ruth chapter 3, verse 12 and 13, redeeming you. And now we're being told he gives himself up on our behalf in order to free us or redeem us, okay, from all the violations of Torah. Doesn't mean you're getting rid of the law. It's when you accept Yeshua, you get a clean slate. Okay, any questions or comments? No, you're good? All right, so let's move on to the next part here. Let's go back to Shemot. Let's go back to Exodus. And let's look at Moshe not wanting to, or Shemot 6, verse 12 and 13, how Jehovah wanted to offer him a job, and Moshe was like, I don't really want this job. But Jehovah made him an offer that he could not refuse to be part of the family. Dave, you want to read verse 12 and 13?
Exodus 6.
Yep, Shemot 6, Exodus 6, verse 12 and 13.
Verse number 12. Moshe said unto Hanodai, "Look, the people of Israel haven't listened to me. So how will Pharaoh listen to me? Poor speaker that I am. But Adonai spoke to Moshe and Aaron and gave them orders concerning both the people of Israel and Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt.
All right, thank you, Dave. All right, so let's take a look at this. Why do you think, Dave? Why do you think Moshe didn't want this job? And so why did God offered it to him? Why do you think he didn't want to do this?
One, he didn't think he was worthy. Two, he wasn't a big talker. He didn't think people would listen to him.
All right. Hey, what about you, Neil? What do you think? Why do you think Moshe didn't want to do this?
I think he lacked confidence in himself and didn't want to put himself out there to where if he couldn't express his thoughts that people would think poorly of him. So he was trying to get out of it every which way he could think of, but that didn't work out for him.
What do you think? Have you ever been offered, felt the Lord, asking you to do something and you didn't want to do it, Neil?
Probably I was, but I was too dumb to realize it. Dumb may be the wrong word, but I hadn't had the scales removed from my eyes, plugs from my ears, or clouds from my brain, and didn't realize that I was being spoken to when actually I was. And thinking about 2020 hindsight, looking back over my life, I feel surely that I was, but I didn't want to hear it at the time. I was too busy, caught up in living the worldly life. So.
What about you, Dave? Did you thank you, Neil. And what about you, Dave? Did you ever now look back in your life a little bit and say, the Lord was calling me, but I didn't really want to do it?
Oh, absolutely. And the very first time I can remember was the first time I saw my wife. And she was in a hardware store, and I walked in, and I walked around the end of a row of shelving, and just like we're sitting here talking, I heard a voice say, "There she is, take good care of her." And the first thought went through my mind and my wife was 21 at the time, and I was 40 something. And I thought, she's just a little girl, and turned around and ran out of there. Got in my truck, I drove 12 miles home and sat in my chair, and I fought with Father, thinking that I had won. And that will be 15 years ago, 15, 16, 17 years ago when that happened.
And how did you feel after that? After that first initial mistake?
Kind of ashamed of myself. I mean, that's the first real time I can remember the Father saying that, "Here you go. You want to serve me? Here's your first big project right here."
All right.
And it's turned out to be the rest of my life project.
He gave you something good. All right, so the reason we're talking about this is that Moshe did not want the job. He wasn't seeking after the job, but Jehovah knows what he's doing, and it shows the very interesting part of Moshe's character, about being humble. Okay, he wasn't seeking after the to be in the limelight, and he actually fought Jehovah, saying, I'm a bad speaker, choose somebody else. It's not my thing. Okay, so a lot of people will, when they read the scriptures, those are a bunch of collection of stories, and if you were writing something about your family, you would not write this type of stuff about your family. Okay. So now we're going to move on a little bit here to take that a little further. Okay. So Moshe, let's go back here for a second here. Okay. He says, I don't want the job. And but Jehovah said, you're going to do this work. Okay. So let's go over to here. And let's go here. Let's turn over to Shemot 7, Exodus 7. Neil, read verse 3. Or I think it's Dave's turn. No, David just read. Neil, read verse 3 through 5.
But I will make him hard-hearted, even though I will increase my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. Pharaoh will not listen to you. Then I will lay my hand on Egypt and bring my armies, my people, the sons of Israel, out of the land of Egypt with great acts of judgment. Then when I stretch out my hand over Egypt and bring the people of Israel out from among them, the Egyptians will know that I am Jehovah.
Amen. All right, so what we have there is Pharaoh is going to, Moshe was hard-hearted. He didn't want to do it. He said, choose somebody else. It was a little bit different of a hard-heartedness, but he is being, hard-hearted like Pharaoh. Because Pharaoh's not going to listen to Jehovah, and he's going to destroy his country because of that. And so that's leading up to this battle that's going to happen. Okay, now turn over to Revelation. Hold the place there in Shemot, and turn over to Revelation 15. And let's look at verse number 1. Revelation 15, verse number 1. Dave, would you read that?
Yep, give me just a sec. Then I saw another sign in heaven, a great and wonderful one. 7 angels with the 7 plagues that are the final ones. Because with them, God's fury is finished.
All right. So what we're learning here is that once you study the beginning, the plagues. Okay. So we're seeing another sign in heaven. Okay. 7 angels with the 7 plagues. Okay. When you study the plagues, you're going to see that they're parallel from Shemot, Exodus to Revelation. They are parallel. Okay. The same gods that were in Egypt are going to be the same gods that are going to be destroyed in Revelation. Okay. And with great signs. So Jehovah brought great signs in Shemot. Okay, so let's go over them to so we see what's going on. So let's go back to Shemot 7, Exodus 7, and let's look at verse 9 through 11. Neil, would you read that, please?
When Pharaoh says to you, perform a miracle, tell Aaron to take his staff and throw it down in front of Pharaoh so that it can become a snake. Moshe and Aaron went into Pharaoh and did this, and Elohim, as Elohim had ordered, Aaron threw down his staff in front of Pharaoh and his servants, and it turned into a snake. The Pharaoh in turn called for the sages and sorcerers, and they too, the magicians of Mizraim, did the same thing, making use of their secret arts.
Hey, so we got something really interesting here, Neil. Why do you think the pagans were able to mimic God? What's your thought there? Why do you think that they were able to mimic what God was doing?
Uh, they were able to do it because I don't know that they were actually mimicking God, but they had the appearance of mimicking God because they were calling on their, for lack of a better term, their dark arts and their abilities that they were receiving from Hasatan to give the impression that they were just as powerful as Jehovah.
Okay, so but wouldn't that confuse people if Moshe is throwing down his staff and it's becoming a snake, and then the Egyptians could do the same thing? Don't you think that would confuse Pharaoh or confuse the people, Neil?
Well, it would confuse them until you get to the next part when the snake that was got its origin from Aaron's staff ate the other snakes. So that kind of gives a checkmate to that sentiment.
All right, what do you think, Dave? What do you think with those people, the pagan, God said to Moses, go get them out. Moses doesn't want it, but he goes, and now they're able to make their staffs into snakes. Or what do you think is going on there, Dave?
Well, I think what they're trying to do is to show all the people that Moses is no different than they are. And so Elohim had to take it one step farther
Okay.
in order to show that Moses wasn't the same as they are.
All right.
And that's by letting Moses' snake eat theirs.
Okay. All right. So let's take a look at the picture. Take a look at this picture over here. The snake was a very prominent god in Egypt. Okay, it's not just a snake, but a god. Okay, and that's something that we need to understand, because you see all you look at it from the Egyptians' point of view. They're looking at all this stuff. Okay, so this guy throws down his staff and becomes a snake. Then the magicians throw down their staffs and it becomes a snake. So you're like, oh, that's very interesting, because this god. Now, this is before the actual plagues begin. This is a sign and wonder. So what this is, this cobra, this was a symbol of ruling power. So this was a god of ruling power, and it's frequently found in Egyptian artwork, so you can find it in hieroglyphics and all other places. And so it's ruling power. So what's happening there in your first sign, because these are not the plagues, because we got the 10 plagues. I mean, there are arguments about that this is a plague, but it only happened there in Pharaoh's court. So, and this was on Pharaoh's headgear. Okay, the snake is on Pharaoh's headgear, as you see if you watch the Ten Commandments movie. You'll see that they got some of the things correct in their costumes. So the cobra was a very high god in Egypt, even so Pharaoh wearing it on his head, and it's about ruling. So when Moshe's staff eats the other staffs, it's our God is going to eat your God, is what he's saying. So when you understand this, when you go to Revelation later on, you're going to understand that our God will eat up all the other gods, okay? And the cobra is a deadly snake, okay? It's on the throne of King Tut. Okay, some people might know that. What the key here is that it is found. It's a symbol of ruling power. Okay, so the snakes, the staffs turn into snakes. The Egyptians are able to make, supposedly make, them with their own gods, and then our God, Moses' staff, eats up all the other ones. So, meaning our God is going to rule over your God. And you also have, what other reference might you have, Neil, of a snake?
Well, that was if you go back to the beginning, the serpent was the creature or being, however you want to phrase it, that started the downfall of mankind in the garden. So.
Oh, yeah, that's good. Satan was turned into a snake. He was a serpent in the garden. So you have this theme from the very beginning. So, it goes through here where Jehovah said, and remember how we started out in Exodus 6, verse 6, about Jehovah redeeming us. You have this whole redemption theme that we've already talked about. And now we're talking about the snake. Why choose that one? Okay. So the snake is a serpent. The serpent was in the garden. The serpent was destroyed by our God, our King, the Father in heaven, Elohim. And now we move on to the next part.
Well, Elohim said, after the event in the garden, that his seed will strike at your heels and you will crush his head. So that was kind of foretelling that the power of Elohim would overcome the serpent eventually.
That is very true. And then we also have the prophecy about the tribe of Dan, where the snake will bite the horse and the rider falls off.
Yes.
Okay. So but you have to understand what God it is to understand what's going on. Because this is not just a plague. It is not just a sign. It's much deeper than that. To fully grasp, you have to fully grasp this. If you're gonna, that's why most of the Gentiles who don't keep the holy days, and many Jews who don't really understand what's going on here, as I didn't as a kid because nobody went in depth like this. But it's a God. Okay, what does that God represent? And that God might be different in some other, different areas of the world, but we have this reference here in the scriptures. So is there a snake in Revelation? Okay, well, Satan's a snake. He's been given that title from Bereshit 1 or Bereshit 2. He's in the garden. And now we have the understanding of the snake. At least, from the Egyptian point of view. Now we move over to here. Okay, so now we get the first plague. Any questions or comments before we move to this?
Done.
Okay, David, would you read Shemot 7, verse 14 through 17, please?
14 through 17.
Correct.
Adonai said unto Moshe, Pharaoh is stubborn. He refuses to let the people go. To confront him, take in your hands the staff which was turned into a snake, the staff, and say to him, Adonai, the God of the Hebrews, sent me to you to say, let my people go, so that they can worship me in the desert. But until now you haven't listened. So Adonai says, this will let you know that I am Adonai. I will take the staff of my hand and strike it, and strike the water in the river, and it will turn to blood.
Okay. All right. So what we have there is we're going to have the first plague, and this is very important because what Jehovah is doing here, what he's doing in verse number 16, is he's setting up terms for peace. And it says, verse 16, and say to him, Jehovah, the Elohim of the Hebrews, sent me to you to say, let my people go so that they can worship me in the desert, but until now you haven't listened, okay? So that's a terms for peace. Let the people go and to worship. But Pharaoh wanted to be worshipped because Pharaoh was a god in his country. So he didn't want anybody else being worshipped, so he's not going to allow it to happen. Okay, so, but Jehovah, before he does anything, has to offer that person terms for peace. And we see from verse 14, Jehovah said to Moshe, Pharaoh is being stubborn. He refuses to let the people go. So we have the snakes. Our snake ate up their snake. Our God ate up their God, showing that he's the ruler. Now Moshe comes and he says, let the people go. But Pharaoh, being stubborn, as most people are, does not want to listen. And he saw the snakes. Our guys could make snakes. They made snakes, and maybe he didn't put too much information into that was a god. What the god meant. As many people who follow pagan gods, they don't really know what they're doing. Okay, because they only know a little bit. But Pharaoh should have known. But Jehovah's saying, he's laying down the terms. In verse 14, he's saying, Pharaoh is stubborn, so this is why I'm doing this now. This is terms for peace, and you understand why you're getting chastised. Okay, so the water turned to blood, and let's go and see what god that was. Okay, so the first plague was blood, Dam, and that's Osiris, Asir, Husar, and Unifer. Okay, these are all gods that are Egyptian gods and other gods. Look them up. Okay, the god of earth and vegetation. Without water, your plants die and you die because you have nothing to eat. So Osiris symbolized in his death the yearly drought and the miraculous rebirth of the periodic flooding of the Nile. Okay, the Nile feeds that whole area down by the Wadi. Nile flows backwards. It flows south to north instead of north to south. And now you see that this god, this demon god, is our God is going after him. Okay, now there was nothing to drink for a whole week. So why do you need, go to Neil first. Why do you need to know this to understand Revelation?
Well, if you draw an analogy between the plagues in Mitzrayim to the plagues that are listed in Revelation, you can see that you know what false deity is being addressed by the plagues in both places. That they're the same deities that's being defeated the first time in Israel, and the second time in Revelation. And by doing that, I guess you have the two witnesses that Jehovah is the true and sovereign Elohim over everything.
Yes, you do get the two witnesses. But the other part, let's go over to David. Is there something in Revelation that you can recall off the top of your head that the vegetation, something happens to the earth, the water, or the earth, David?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's, there's going to be fires, there's going to be drought, there's going to be all kinds of plagues. And for the exact same reason that Moshe had to go to Pharaoh. Only it's not going to be just turning them loose to go into the desert to worship. Okay. Things are going to be a whole lot worse when the plagues come around in Revelation than they were. Not that they weren't bad, but then they were, then they're going to be worse than they were when when this was going on with Pharaoh.
Yeah,
In other words,
go ahead.
In other words, Pharaoh was just a taste of what's to come. It was his way of negotiating in a more peaceful manner. Okay, if you do this, I won't do this, but if you don't do this, then I'm going to do this. So you have a choice.
All right, so you have a choice, okay. Now, one thing I want to point out to you guys and to all those listening is that in Egypt, it was localized. In Revelation, it's going to be worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's a very important point to know that God is going to our God is going to take away our water. He's going to take away the vegetation. There's going to be famine because the water's not going to come back or it's not going to be able to be used. But without this understanding, you don't grasp the concept of what's going on in Revelation. And another thing to point out is Jehovah is doing this to a Gentile. Pharaoh is a Gentile. Okay, so when he does it to the world, that's why, when you look at Zechariah, remember in Zechariah, you don't come up to celebrate the Feast of Sukkot, all you Gentile nations? You're going to get no what? No rain. Okay, so you got to understand the beginning if you're going to understand the end. Go ahead, Neil.
Also, in Mitzrayim, when Yehovah gave his terms for peace, he was applying that to one nation. But since then, his terms for peace have been highlighted throughout the Torah, and Yeshua reiterates them in the Brit Hadashah, the terms for peace. And once we have rejected his terms for peace, he's going to use these same plagues or the same deities that he used to convince Pharaoh that he was not the all-powerful one. He's going to use those same deities to wreak his destruction on the people that have not accepted him and accepted Mashiach. And again, he is going to prove that he is all powerful and he is sovereign over all things.
I agree with you totally. And the other part that you might want to add to that is also that, when Yeshua tells us in Matthew 28, verse 19, go make disciples of all nations, and he says, teaching them about the Father, the Son, and the Ruach HaKodesh, he's sending out terms for peace to the world. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, that was kind of what I was alluding to all throughout the the four Gospels, when Yeshua's words are written down, that's exactly what he was doing throughout his ministry. He was reiterating Elohim's terms for peace, and if you don't accept those terms, what you could expect to reap is a just reward for not doing that.
That is very true, but it's also, you're going to get your just reward, like Neil just said. But I have to point this out, because the Gentiles don't seem to understand it, that Jehovah is not. All these plagues are not going against a Jewish nation; they're going against a Gentile nation. And if Jehovah's the same yesterday, today, and forever, then these Gentile nations should understand that, the same thing is going to happen. Now, people say, well, we're not under the law anymore. Well, was Pharaoh under the law? He was a Gentile. Was the law even written on parchment yet or paper? No. Okay, because
Nope.
Go ahead.
Nope, it wasn't.
That's correct.
I have a
So
question.
go ahead, Dave.
In the book of Revelation, is he not saying that I have given you ample time to accept my terms? And now it's too late.
Well, he is saying that. So what we need to understand is, tilt your camera down so we can see more than your forehead.
Oh, sorry.
What we're seeing here is, you need to understand the beginning so you can understand the end. And that's what the false prophet, the false pulpit prophets are not teaching their people, is that, because let's take our steps here. Step 1. Moshe goes to offer terms for peace to a Gentile. 2. The leader of that Gentile nation doesn't want to follow Jehovah's terms for peace. So Jehovah is going to subsequently take apart that nation and their gods. It isn't just Pharaoh that's following these gods, it's all the people. The whole nation is following these gods. So now you come to this part here that, he's bringing this. So who is this God? So you go over to here, and that God is the God of vegetation. It's the God of water. So in Revelation, when you get there, to understand that the water turns bitter, okay, and that these plagues are going out throughout the globe to all these Gentile nations. Well, Pharaoh was not under the law. Yet God did this to him. Egypt was not under the law because, one, the law is not written. Well, now you have this part here where it messes totally with the church's understanding of, well, we don't need to do this or whatever, because God is doing it to a Gentile nation that's not under the law. So how can a just God do something like this? What do you think, Dave?
How can he bring the plagues on? Because he's already laid down the terms of peace. He's given the people the opportunity to say, okay, we want peace, so we're going to do things your way instead of our way. It goes back to Exodus 20. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. So he's whittling down their gods.
Okay, now let me ask you another question. Now, in the church, was this ever taught that Jehovah was going after a nation that was Gentile, and the nation that that has to follow the law? Did you ever hear this in church?
No.
So why do you think that was?
I never heard it in church. Just because they're not teaching it. Why aren't they teaching it? I don't think they know. There might be a handful that know, but they're still not teaching it.
Don't they have a Bible?
They do, but I don't know if they understand, how to study it, how to read it.
What about you, Neil? What do you think about this? This Gentile nation is not under the law, but they're being chastised by our God.
Yeah, he's in the passage that was just read. He is in this passage. He's not telling the Mizraim or the Egyptians that they have to bow down and serve him or worship him. He's saying that you got to let my people go so they can bow down and worship me and do my bidding. And he's not saying that you at this time that you have to they have to give up their gods. They just have to recognize and acknowledge and accommodate his people, the Hebrews, and allow them to do what they feel they need to do to worship him. But in the modern church, you never hear this. And what I heard while I was going through the Lutheran church is, and the teaching is still there. The pastors, I'm sure, know it, but they're not allowed to, or they have been kind of like the kids in the modern public schools. They have been brainwashed that this no longer applies. The Torah is just and the Tanakh is just the history of the Jews, and we don't have to study that and live by that because Yeshua rewrote the law when he hung on the stake. So that's their false understanding and false teaching, and the way they falsely continue to live their lives and in their eyes honor Elohim when truly they're not. They're spitting in his face.
It's very sad that their teachers don't. I mean, when you just look at this, it's like, okay, Pharaoh's a Gentile, the leader of a Gentile nation. He's offered peace terms, let those people go, and they'll come back. They're going to worship Jehovah for a little while, and they're going to come back. And now, you're gonna get chastised, and for people not to understand that, that he doesn't change, and he did this to these people. Don't think you're any different, especially when somebody tells you the prophecy of Zechariah. You get no rain if you don't come and worship on Sukkot. Let's turn to hold your place there in Shemot and turn to Revelation 16. And let's read verse number 3. Revelation 16, verse number 3. Neil, would you read that, please?
The second one poured out his bowl into the sea, and it became like the blood of a dead person, and every living thing in the sea died.
Oh, it became like the blood of a dead person. Okay, and so the second part is boiled down on the sea. That's water. So you got the water reference here. I mean, there's you keep reading and you study this. Like I said, this is just for doing an overview on here. But that's why when I do a full Seder, it takes hours and hours and hours because you go deep into this. Okay, so you see the parallel of what's being drawn here between the Tanakh, the Old Testament, the Torah, and what's happening in Revelation. So why did he pour his bowl out into the sea and it became like blood? Well, I'll bring this up for everybody. Well, because of this. Okay? Once you know the beginning, the Old Testament is the New Testament concealed. The New Testament is the Old Testament revealed. So you got this here, and then you go over to Revelation. There you go. Now, you have to understand the gods. Okay, so you got these gods of Cyrus. I mean, that's just a little piece of the information you can find about these gods. You go deeper. And you'll see all other parts of Revelation. Any questions or comments? All right.
Pretty much set in concrete.
Yes, it is. Okay, so let's go back to Shemot 8, Exodus 8, and let's read verse 3 through 5. Shemot Exodus chapter 8, verse 3 through 5. David, would you read that, please?
But the magicians did the same with their secret arts and brought up frogs unto the land of Egypt. The Pharaoh summoned Moshe and Aaron and said, intercede with Adonai to take the frogs away from me and my people, and I will let the people go and sacrifice to Adonai. Moshe said to Pharaoh, not only that, but you can have the honor of naming the time when I will pray for you, for servants, your servants and your people to be rid of the frogs, both yourselves and your homes, and that they stay only in the river. How far did you want me to go?
No, that's good. That's good. Let's pause there. All right. So let's see here. Dave, is a frog hot-blooded or cold-blooded?
So they're cold-blooded.
Explain to me what cold-blooded is.
I don't remember the difference.
How about you, Neil? Do you know what the difference between hot-blooded and cold-blooded is?
The cold-blooded animals do not do well if they're placed in out of their environment. In other words, the water keeps their body temperature at a lower level, and if they come up on land, they don't last very long.
Okay. The cold-blooded animal's temperature will be the same exact temperature as it is outside. So they won't know if they're being cooked or anything like that. So if you read the whole part about the frogs, is they go up into the beds and they go into the ovens and stuff. You can put a frog in an oven, and the frog won't know it's getting. If you turn the oven on, he won't know he's getting cooked. Same as what's going on with the people of the earth. We're cold-blooded to God, and now what's going on is, it's the comparison of the frogs is that we become cold-blooded. We don't know what's happening because we're just the temperature of what's around us. That's the same as the frogs. They are the same as whatever the temperature is around them. That's what temperature they are. So they won't last, forever, because if it gets too cold, they'll die, and if it gets too hot, they'll die. Okay. Now this is, what does Yeshua say? He wants you either hot or cold. He hates when you're lukewarm. Okay. Right. So let's take a look at this. What God was that? Okay. Plague number 2 is frog Zipperdea. Okay. This is one of the principal goddesses of the land of was Hecht, the wife of the creator of the world. Now, the wife of the creator of the world her frogs are everywhere. Okay, and finally, the Egyptians say, take these frogs away. Okay, so you want the frogs from the wife of the creator of the world taken away? Why? Don't you like them? Don't you want all these blessings? Okay, she was a midwife of the birth of the sun, meaning the sun in the sky. Okay. Now you're wanting the Egyptians are wanting to get rid of all this, right? And you're going to see in Revelation there's frogs are mentioned. Okay, so then you can study about the number 2. 2 is the number for division because you have 2, they're going to have different division. Or it can be 2 is the number of only 2 are you together in Yeshua's name. There he is in our midst. So now you got this God Hecht. This represents the grain dying. Okay, it rots. Okay, so now you got these frogs everywhere. They're going to stink. They're in your bed. They're in your oven. They're everywhere. They're in your kneading bowl, and they are cold-blooded, which means there's a temperature of whatever is around them. Okay, so now, so we got about her. All right. Any questions or comments about that, God? Well, let's turn to Revelation 16. Revelation 16, let's read verse 12 through 15. Revelation 16, verse 12 through 15. Neil, would you read that, please?
The sixth one poured out his bowl in the great river Euphrates, and the water dried up in order to prepare the way for the kings from the east. And I saw 3 unclean spirits that looked like frogs, and they came from the mouth of the dragon, from the mouth of the beast, and from the mouth of the false prophet. And they are miracle-working demonic spirits which go out to the kings of the whole inhabited world to assemble them for the war of the great day of Jehovah Shavuot. Look, I am coming like a thief. How blessed are those who stay alert and keep their clothes clean, so that they won't be walking naked and be publicly put to shame.
Amen. All right. So we see there, what we just read there in verse number 13, I saw 3 unclean spirits that looked like frogs. Why would Yeshua be telling us they look like frogs? Okay, so you go back to what this small overview that I have about the frogs. Okay, you got the wife of the creator of the world. She was there at the birth of she's a midwife, so she had something to do with birth. Okay, her name was a great magician. Oh, then the magicians, weren't they able to reproduce this? Yes, they were. Okay, and now we have Revelation telling us this is about destruction. Okay, Yeshua is coming like a thief in the night. Stay alert. In verse 15, keep their clothes clean and they won't be walking naked. Okay, so now Jehovah is sending all these frogs because Pharaoh didn't want to let the people go to worship God. Okay, so now, since God has offered terms for peace, he's going to strike this Gentile nation down with all these frogs. You want to worship this God? Okay, I'm going to give you so much of that God. Well, now you get to have so much of it. Now in Revelation, you're being told it's coming like a thief in the night. And now you can understand. Once you understand the beginning, you understand the end. Okay, we're going to wrap there. Any questions or comments? Any nuggets that you enjoyed today?
I'll just take some of the fog out of my head. I mean, I don't want to put this so it doesn't sound stupid. I've studied this before. I studied this with Keith years ago, but it's making it more real, you know, which, and I understand every time you read it and study it, it should get more real.
All right, Neil, you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I had some scales, some additional scales lifted from my eyes today, because I never put two and two together that the plagues of Mizraim were the same plagues that we were going to be facing in the final days. I've read it, but I never, like I said, never put two and two together to see that they were both talking about the same thing. So it was a good teaching. Good. I'm glad those every day I seem to have more scales lifted from my eyes and a few less clouds in my brain. So today was a good day.
Yeah, amen to that.
Amen. All right, let's just close in some prayer, and then we'll go on our way today. Thank you, Lord, for your blessings today. Thank you, Lord, for having scales fall from our eyes, that we may know you more and love you more and understand your word more, and how you concealed things in the beginning to reveal them in the end. Let us come closer to you, so that you, the living water, will be blessed. In your name, Yeshua, and everybody says amen.
Shalom, this is Messianic Rabbi Andrew Dinnerman. I would personally like to thank you for tuning in to the Remnant's Call each and every week. You can listen to the full message on our website, bethgoyim.org. If you have drawn closer to the King of Kings, learned more about him today, we are blessed. If you are blessed by these messages, please consider a donation to our ministry. You can go to our website, bethgoyim.org. That's BETHGOYIM.org, and click on the donate button. You do not have to have a PayPal account to donate. All you need is a debit card. Once again, thank you very much for listening to The Remnant's Call.
If you have not taken your first steps to be born again, just ask God's help. Remember, it's His loving grace that has come to find you. No one is worthy or able to reach God, but God can reach us, and He's reaching out to you now. Just open your heart and let Him in. His arms are open, and the blessing of salvation and eternal life are waiting for you. Don't let it wait any longer.